The sound of the bolt sliding into place on the other side of the door was the coldest thing Eliza Katherine had ever heard. Colder even than the howling wind that whipped snow against her back and froze the tears on her cheeks. She pounded her fists against the wooden door until her knuckles bled, screaming for her stepmother to reconsider, begging her father to intervene. But the house remained silent except for the muffled sounds of her half-siblings being ushered away from the windows. The December storm of 1885 had rolled into Flagstaff, Arizona with unexpected fury, transforming the high-altitude town into a frozen wasteland. And Eliza stood in the middle of it, wearing nothing but a thin cotton dress and worn boots, her shawl already soaked through and useless. She had known things were bad since her father remarried 2 years ago, but she had never imagined it would come to this. Margaret, her stepmother, had been looking for any excuse to be rid of her, and when Eliza had refused to hand over the small inheritance her mother had left her, a silver locket and $20 in coins, Margaret had flown into a rage. She had accused Eliza of theft, of laziness, of corrupting her younger children with her presence. Her father, weak-willed and desperate to keep peace in his new marriage, had simply looked away as Margaret dragged Eliza to the door and shoved her into the storm. The cold bit through her dress within minutes, and Eliza's teeth chattered so violently she thought they might crack. She stumbled away from the house, knowing that staying on the porch would only mean freezing to death within sight of her family. The street was empty, the storm keeping everyone indoors, and she could barely see 3 feet in front of her through the swirling snow. She wrapped her arms around herself and started walking, having no destination in mind except away. Her feet went numb first, then her fingers. She tried to remember what she had heard about surviving cold, something about keeping moving, about finding shelter, but her mind grew foggy as her body's core temperature dropped. She passed the general store, closed and dark, and the saloon, where warm light spilled from the windows but where she knew no decent woman could enter without inviting trouble. She kept walking, her steps growing slower, more uncertain. The world tilted sideways and Eliza realized she had fallen. The snow felt almost warm against her cheek, which some distant part of her mind recognized as a very bad sign. She tried to push herself up, but her arms would not cooperate. She thought of her mother, dead these 5 years from fever, and wondered if she would see her soon. She thought of the life she had imagined for herself, marriage and children and happiness, all of it slipping away into the white nothing of the storm. She did not hear the horse approaching, did not register the sound of boots hitting the ground near her head. The first she knew of her rescue was the feeling of strong arms lifting her from the snow, and a deep voice saying words she could not quite make out. She tried to open her eyes, but her lashes were frozen together. She felt herself being lifted onto a horse, felt the warmth of another body behind her, holding her steady, and then the world faded to black. Warmth returned in stages, painful and slow. First her face, then her hands, then gradually her feet, each awakening accompanied by a burning sensation that made her whimper. She became aware of lying on something soft, of blankets piled heavy on top of her, of a fire crackling somewhere nearby. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself in a small cabin, rough-hewn but sturdy, with a stone fireplace taking up most of one wall. She was lying on a bed in the corner, still in her damp dress but with thick quilts layered over her. A man sat in a chair near the fire, his back to her, broad-shouldered and tall even while seated. He wore a worn leather vest over a dark shirt, and his light brown hair curled slightly at the collar. As if sensing her gaze, he turned, and Eliza found herself looking into a pair of striking gray eyes set in a weathered but handsome face. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days' worth of stubble. "You are awake," he said, rising from the chair and crossing to the bed. His voice was the same deep one she had heard in the storm, touched with concern. "How do you feel?" "Cold," Eliza managed, though in truth she was warmer than she had been in hours. "Where am I?" "My cabin, about 2 miles outside of town. I am Franklin Ashford. I found you collapsed in the street." He pulled the chair closer to the bedside and sat down, studying her with those intense gray eyes. "What were you doing out in the storm?" The memory came flooding back, and Eliza felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them away, not wanting to appear weak in front of this stranger who had saved her life. "My stepmother locked me out. I had nowhere else to go." Franklin's expression darkened. "Locked you out? In this weather?" "She wanted me gone," Eliza said simply. "My father did not stop her." "That is attempted murder," Franklin said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You could have died out there. You nearly did die. I know." Eliza tried to sit up but found herself still too weak. Franklin immediately reached out to steady her, his hand warm and solid on her shoulder. "Easy," he said. "You need to rest. Your body has been through an ordeal." He stood and moved to the fireplace, where a pot hung over the flames. He ladled something into a tin cup and brought it back to her. "Drink this. It is just broth, but it will help." Eliza accepted the cup with shaking hands, and when it became clear she could not hold it steady, Franklin wrapped his larger hands around hers, helping her guide it to her lips. The broth was rich and warm, and she could taste beef and herbs. She drank it slowly, feeling strength seep back into her limbs with each sip. "Thank you," she said when the cup was empty. "You saved my life." "Anyone would have done the same," Franklin said, but Eliza shook her head. "No one else did. I passed a dozen houses and the saloon." "You are the only one who stopped." Franklin looked uncomfortable with the praise. He took the cup from her and set it aside. "What is your name?" "Eliza Katherine. I am 19 years old, and I have lived in Flagstaff my whole life, for whatever that is worth." "It is worth something," Franklin said. "You have roots here, family, even if they do not deserve you." "What about you?" Eliza asked. "Are you from Flagstaff?" Franklin shook his head. "Montana originally. I have been drifting for the past 5 years, working cattle ranches and breaking horses. I came to Flagstaff 3 months ago for work on the Rocking W Ranch. I bought this cabin from a prospector who was heading to California." He gestured around the small space. "It is not much, but it is mine." Eliza looked around the cabin with fresh eyes. It was sparse but clean, with a few pieces of simple furniture and some supplies stacked neatly on shelves. A rifle hung over the door, and a pair of worn saddlebags sat in the corner. It was the home of a man who traveled light, who did not put down roots easily. "It is more than I have now," Eliza said quietly. Franklin's expression softened. "You can stay here as long as you need. I will not turn you out, especially not into another storm." "I cannot impose on you like that," Eliza protested, though the thought of leaving this warm cabin and venturing back into the cold filled her with dread. "You do not even know me." "I know you were left to die by people who should have protected you," Franklin said, his voice firm. "I know you need help. That is enough." The simple certainty in his words brought fresh tears to Eliza's eyes. She had spent so long being told she was a burden, being made to feel like her very existence was an inconvenience, that this stranger's kindness felt almost overwhelming. "I will earn my keep," she said. "I can cook and clean. I can mend clothes. I will not be dead weight." "You will rest first," Franklin said. "We can worry about the rest later." He stood and moved to a trunk at the foot of the bed, pulling out a folded shirt. "This will be too big for you, but it is dry. I will step outside while you change." "Outside?" Eliza looked toward the window where snow still fell steadily. "You will freeze." "I will be fine," Franklin assured her. "I need to check on my horse anyway, make sure she has enough feed." He pulled on a heavy coat and hat, then stepped out into the storm, closing the door firmly behind him. Eliza struggled out of her damp dress, her fingers still clumsy with cold. Franklin's shirt was indeed enormous on her, falling past her knees and requiring her to roll the sleeves several times to free her hands. But it was warm and dry and smelled faintly of soap and leather and something else, something distinctly masculine that made her cheeks warm. She climbed back under the blankets just as Franklin returned, stamping snow from his boots. "Better?" he asked, hanging his coat and hat on pegs by the door. "Much," Eliza said. "Thank you." Franklin nodded and moved to the fireplace, adding more wood to the flames. "The storm is getting worse. I do not think it will let up before morning." "I am sorry to be such trouble," Eliza said. Franklin turned to look at her, his expression serious. "You are not trouble, Eliza. What happened to you was wrong, and I am glad I found you when I did." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "In the morning, when the storm clears, we can go to the sheriff if you want. What your stepmother did was a crime." Eliza considered this, but the thought of facing her father and Margaret again, of airing the family's troubles in public, made her stomach turn. "I do not think that would help. My father would deny it. Margaret would claim I ran away. It would be my word against theirs." "You bear the marks of it," Franklin pointed out. "Your hands are torn up from pounding on the door. You nearly died from exposure." "The sheriff is friends with my father," Eliza said. "They play cards together every Saturday. He would not take my side." She had seen enough of how justice worked in small towns to know that family loyalty and friendship often counted for more than truth. Franklin's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Then what will you do?" It was the question Eliza had been avoiding asking herself. She had no money, no family willing to take her in, no prospects for employment that she could think of. A young, unmarried woman alone had few options in 1885, and most of them were not good. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I will figure something out. I always do." Franklin studied her for a long moment, and Eliza had the unsettling feeling that he could see right through her brave words to the fear underneath. "You can stay here," he said again, "for as long as you need. I meant what I said." "But what would people think?" Eliza asked. "An unmarried woman living with an unmarried man. My reputation would be ruined." "Your reputation will be ruined anyway once word gets out that you left your father's house," Franklin said bluntly. "Fair or not, that is how people will see it. At least here you will be safe and warm." He was right, Eliza knew. The double standard was maddening but real. She would be blamed for the situation regardless of the circumstances. The thought made anger flare hot in her chest, burning away some of the fear. "Then I accept your offer," she said, lifting her chin. "And I will work to earn my keep, despite what you say. I will not be a charity case." Something like approval flickered in Franklin's eyes. "Fair enough. But you rest first. We can work out the details when you are stronger." Over the next few days, as the storm blew itself out and Flagstaff dug out from under 2 feet of snow, Eliza recovered her strength in the warmth of Franklin's cabin. True to her word, she took over the cooking and cleaning, bringing a woman's touch to the bachelor space. She mended Franklin's shirts and socks, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of needle and thread. Franklin, for his part, spent his days working at the Rocking W Ranch, returning each evening with fresh supplies and news from town. The news was not good. Word had spread quickly that Eliza Katherine had left her father's house, and the rumors were exactly as ugly as she had feared. Some said she had run off with a man. Others claimed she had stolen from her family. A few, closer to the truth, whispered that she had been turned out, but even those voices seemed to blame Eliza rather than her stepmother. "Your father is telling people you left of your own accord," Franklin reported one evening, his voice tight with anger. "He claims you have always been headstrong and difficult." Eliza's hand stilled on the shirt she was mending. The betrayal hurt more than she wanted to admit. She had known her father was weak, but she had not thought him capable of such outright lies. "I suppose I should not be surprised." Franklin crossed to where she sat and knelt beside her chair, his gray eyes searching her face. "You could confront him, force him to tell the truth." "And what good would that do?" Eliza asked. "He would deny it, and I have no proof. Better to let it go and move forward." "That does not seem fair," Franklin said. "Fairness has nothing to do with it," Eliza replied. "This is survival." She set aside the mending and looked at Franklin, really looked at him. Over the past few days, she had learned that he was 26 years old, that he had left Montana after his parents died of cholera, that he was good with horses and patient with people. She had learned that he took his coffee black and his eggs fried, that he hummed while he worked and read dime novels by the fire at night. She had learned that he was kind and honorable in a way that made her chest ache. She had also learned that she was falling in love with him, which was possibly the most inconvenient thing that could happen given her circumstances. Franklin seemed to sense the shift in her thoughts because his expression grew more intense. "Eliza, I want you to know that you are safe here. I would never take advantage of you or expect anything from you. You have my word on that." "I know," Eliza said softly. "You have been nothing but kind to me." "I just wanted to be clear," Franklin said. He stood, putting distance between them, and Eliza felt the loss of his nearness like a physical thing. The days turned into weeks, and a careful routine developed. Franklin worked at the ranch during the day while Eliza kept the cabin running. In the evenings, they cooked dinner together, talking about everything and nothing. Franklin told her stories of his travels, of the places he had seen and the people he had met. Eliza shared memories of her mother, of the happy years before fever and grief and Margaret had changed everything. They were careful never to touch more than necessary, maintaining a respectful distance that Eliza found increasingly frustrating. She caught herself watching Franklin when he thought she was not looking, admiring the way his hands moved as he cleaned his rifle or the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She wondered if he felt the same pull she did, the same magnetic attraction that seemed to draw them together. Christmas came and went quietly. Franklin brought home a small pine tree that they decorated with strings of popcorn and paper stars. Eliza made a special dinner with a chicken Franklin had bought in town, and they exchanged modest gifts. She gave him a new shirt she had sewn from fabric she had found in his trunk, and he gave her a beautiful turquoise pendant on a silver chain that he said reminded him of her eyes. "It is too much," Eliza protested, but Franklin shook his head. "It is not enough," he said quietly, and the look in his eyes made Eliza's breath catch. That night, as they sat by the fire, Franklin reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he had initiated contact beyond the practical, and Eliza's heart began to race. "Eliza," he said, his voice rough, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" Eliza asked, though she thought she might know. She could see it in the way he looked at her, in the careful way he avoided being too close. "These past weeks with you have been the happiest I have known in a long time," Franklin said. "You have brought life to this cabin, to my days. I look forward to coming home in a way I never did before." He paused, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on the back of her hand. "I know the circumstances are not ideal. I know you are here because you had nowhere else to go, but I need you to know that my feelings for you have nothing to do with obligation or pity." "What do they have to do with?" Eliza whispered. "Everything," Franklin said simply. "Your strength, your kindness, your laugh, the way you hum while you cook, the way you are not afraid to speak your mind. I am falling in love with you, Eliza, and I needed you to know." Joy flooded through Eliza, so intense it almost hurt. "Franklin," she said, squeezing his hand. "I am falling in love with you too. I have been for weeks." Franklin's face transformed with a smile that made him look years younger. "Truly, truly," Eliza confirmed. "I tried not to. I told myself it was just gratitude or proximity, but it is so much more than that." Franklin raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. "I want to court you properly. I want to do this right. We are living together," Eliza pointed out with a small laugh. "I think we may have skipped some steps." "Then we will go back and do them now," Franklin said. "I want to marry you, Eliza, not because it is the proper thing to do, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "Yes," Eliza said, the word bursting out of her before Franklin had even finished speaking. "Yes, I will marry you." Franklin stood and pulled her to her feet, his hands cupping her face with infinite gentleness. "May I kiss you?" In answer, Eliza rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise, and when they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "We should do this properly," Franklin said again, though he made no move to let her go. "I should speak to your father, ask his permission." Eliza's smile faded. "He will say no. He will forbid it just to spite me." "Then we will marry anyway," Franklin said firmly. "But I will ask, because I want there to be no question that I am honoring you." The next day, Franklin rode into town while Eliza waited anxiously at the cabin. She cleaned things that were already clean, cooked food they did not need, and wore a path in the floor with her pacing. When she finally heard hoofbeats outside, she rushed to the door. Franklin's expression told her everything she needed to know before he even spoke. "He refused," he said, swinging down from his horse. "He called you ungrateful and said you had made your bed and could lie in it. Your stepmother would not even come to the door." Eliza felt anger replace her anxiety. She had expected this, but it still stung. "Then we will marry without his blessing." "Are you sure?" Franklin asked, taking her hands in his. "This will likely mean a permanent break with your family." "They broke with me the night they threw me into the storm," Eliza said. "I am sure, Franklin. I want to be your wife." They were married a week later in a small ceremony at the Flagstaff courthouse, with two of Franklin's friends from the ranch serving as witnesses. Eliza wore a simple blue dress that Franklin had bought for her in town, and carried a small bouquet of winter greenery. The ceremony was brief and without frills, but when the justice of the peace pronounced them man and wife, Eliza felt a joy so complete it brought tears to her eyes. Franklin kissed her gently in front of their witnesses, then more thoroughly once they were alone in the wagon heading back to the cabin. "Mrs. Ashford," he murmured against her lips. "Mr. Ashford," Eliza replied, smiling. Their wedding night was tender and careful, Franklin treating her like something precious and fragile. Eliza had heard stories from other women about the marriage bed, tales that ranged from frightening to embarrassing. But with Franklin, there was only warmth and love and a sense of rightness that made her feel safe even in vulnerability. Afterward, as they lay tangled together under the quilts, Franklin traced patterns on her shoulder and said, "I promise to take care of you always. You will never face the cold alone again." "I know," Eliza said, pressing a kiss to his chest, "and I promise to love you always through whatever comes." Life settled into a new rhythm after their marriage. Franklin continued working at the Rocking W Ranch, and Eliza transformed the cabin into a true home. She planted a garden in the spring, putting in vegetables and herbs. She traded eggs from the chickens. Franklin bought her for fabric and thread in town. She made friends with some of the other ranch wives, women who did not judge her for the circumstances of her departure from her father's house. Town visits were always awkward, as Eliza occasionally caught sight of her father or stepmother on the street. They never acknowledged her, passing by as if she were a stranger. Her half-siblings, whom she had helped raise, looked through her with blank eyes. The rejection hurt, but Eliza had Franklin and their life together, and that was enough. Spring gave way to summer, and Eliza realized she was pregnant. She told Franklin one evening over dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. His eyes went wide, then filled with such joy that Eliza's remaining worries dissolved. "A baby," he said, rising from his chair and pulling her into his arms. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Eliza asked, though she could see that he was. "I am terrified and thrilled in equal measure," Franklin admitted. "I have never been a father before." "And I have never been a mother," Eliza said. "We will figure it out together." Franklin knelt and pressed a kiss to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. We are very excited to meet you." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer and into fall. Franklin became increasingly protective, insisting that Eliza not overwork herself and bringing her little treats from town. He built a cradle in the evenings, working by firelight to create something beautiful and sturdy for their child. In late October, on a crisp autumn evening, Eliza went into labor. Franklin rode into town to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Henderson, who had delivered half the babies in Flagstaff. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Franklin held Eliza's hand through all of it, whispering encouragement and wiping the sweat from her brow. When their son finally arrived, red-faced and squalling with healthy lungs, Franklin wept openly. "He is perfect," he said, looking down at the baby in Eliza's arms. "You are perfect." They named him Thomas William Ashford, after Franklin's father and Eliza's grandfather. He had Franklin's gray eyes and Eliza's dark hair, and from the first moment, he had both parents wrapped around his tiny fingers. The winter after Thomas was born was mild, nothing like the terrible storm that had brought Franklin and Eliza together. They spent cozy evenings in the cabin, taking turns walking the floor with the baby and marveling at every small milestone. Franklin proved to be a devoted father, patient and loving in a way that made Eliza fall even more deeply in love with him. In the spring, Franklin came home one day with news. "The foreman at the Rocking W is retiring," he said. "The owner asked if I would take over the position. It means better pay and a house on the ranch property." "That is wonderful," Eliza said, bouncing Thomas on her hip. "You have worked so hard. You deserve this." "The house is bigger than this cabin," Franklin continued. 4 rooms with a real kitchen. There would be space for Thomas to grow and for more children if we are blessed with them." "It sounds perfect," Eliza said. "When would we move?" "Next month, if we accept," Franklin said. "But Eliza, I want you to know that I am happy here too. This cabin brought us together. I do not want to leave it if you are not ready." Eliza looked around the small space that had been her refuge and her home for over a year. She had been happy here, but she was also ready for something more. "I am ready," she said. "Let us move forward together." The move to the Rocking W happened on a bright May morning. Franklin's friends from the ranch helped transport their belongings, and by evening they were settled into the new house. It was indeed larger, with a proper stove in the kitchen and windows that let in plenty of light. There was even a small barn where Franklin could keep his horses and Eliza could house more chickens. Life on the ranch suited both of them. Franklin thrived in his new role as foreman, his natural leadership and horse skills making him popular with the ranch hands. Eliza made friends with the other families who lived and worked on the ranch, finding a community she had never had in town. One afternoon in June, Eliza was hanging laundry when she saw a familiar figure approaching down the road. Her heart began to pound as she recognized her father, older and grayer than she remembered, walking with a slight limp she did not recall from before. She considered going inside and pretending she had not seen him, but something made her stay where she was. Her father approached slowly, his hat in his hands, his expression uncertain. "Eliza," he said when he was close enough, "I hope I am not intruding." "What do you want?" Eliza asked, keeping her voice neutral. She could see Franklin emerging from the barn, alerted by the presence of a stranger. "I heard you have a son," her father said. "I wanted to meet my grandson." "Now you want to be family?" Eliza asked, anger flaring hot in her chest. "After you let your wife throw me into a blizzard, after you told the whole town I left of my own accord." Her father had the grace to look ashamed. "I know I failed you. I was weak and cowardly, and I have regretted it every day since." Franklin reached Eliza's side, his hand coming to rest protectively on her back. "Mr. Katherine," he said coolly, "what brings you here?" "I came to apologize," Eliza's father said. "And to try to make amends if that is possible." "Amends?" Eliza repeated. "You nearly killed me. You lied about me. You cut me off without a second thought." "I know," her father said, his voice breaking. "Margaret and I have separated. She took the children and moved to California to live with her sister. When she left, it was like waking from a bad dream. I saw clearly for the first time in years what I had allowed to happen, what I had done to you." Eliza felt something twist in her chest. Part of her wanted to send him away, to refuse his apology and the complicated feelings that came with it. But another part, the part that remembered the father he had been before Margaret, before grief had changed him, hesitated. "You hurt me deeply," she said finally. "You chose her over me, your own daughter. That is not something I can forget." "I am not asking you to forget," her father said. "I am just asking for a chance to know you again and to meet my grandson. If you say no, I will understand, but I had to try." Eliza looked up at Franklin, seeking his guidance. He squeezed her shoulder gently but said nothing, leaving the decision to her. "You can meet Thomas," Eliza said at last. "But that is all I can promise right now. Trust has to be earned back." Her father's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Eliza. That is more than I deserve." They went inside, and Eliza brought out Thomas, now 7 months old and full of smiles. Her father held his grandson with shaking hands, and the look on his face was one of such regret and love that Eliza felt her anger soften slightly. Over the following months, her father became a regular visitor to the ranch. He was careful never to overstay his welcome and always respectful of the boundaries Eliza set. Slowly, painfully, they began to rebuild something resembling a relationship. It would never be what it was before, Eliza knew, but it was something. Franklin watched these developments with quiet approval. "I am glad you are giving him a chance," he said one night as they lay in bed. "Everyone deserves the opportunity to make things right." "He does not deserve it," Eliza said. "But I am not doing it for him. I am doing it for me and for Thomas. I do not want to carry that anger forever." Franklin kissed her forehead. "You are a better person than most. I learned from the best," Eliza said, snuggling closer to him. The years passed peacefully. Thomas grew from a baby to a toddler to a young boy, all energy and curiosity. When he was 3, Eliza gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Sarah, who had their mother's dark hair and their father's gray eyes. The house rang with laughter and the chaos of small children, and Franklin and Eliza navigated parenthood with the same teamwork they brought to everything else. Franklin was promoted again, this time to ranch manager, overseeing not just the cattle operations but the entire property. The owner, an aging cattleman named Mr. Roberts, had grown to trust and rely on Franklin completely. With the promotion came an even larger house and a significant increase in pay. "We are doing well," Franklin said one evening, looking around their comfortable home. "Better than I ever dreamed when I was drifting from ranch to ranch." "We are blessed," Eliza agreed, watching their children play on the floor. Thomas was building something elaborate with wooden blocks while the twins toddled around, knocking down his creations and making him laugh despite his protests. When Thomas was 8 and the twins were 5, tragedy struck the ranch. Mr. Roberts passed away suddenly from a heart attack, leaving his considerable property without clear direction. His children, who lived back east, had no interest in running a cattle ranch and put it up for sale. Franklin came home one day with a thoughtful expression. "The ranch is being sold," he told Eliza. "The Roberts children want to settle the estate quickly." "What will that mean for us?" Eliza asked, worry creeping into her voice. A new owner might not want Franklin as manager, might want to bring in their own people. "I have been thinking," Franklin said slowly. "We have saved money over the years. Between my earnings and what we have put aside, we might have enough to make an offer ourselves." Eliza stared at him. "You want to buy the ranch? I know it is a risk," Franklin said. "But I know this land and these cattle. I know how to make it profitable. And if we owned it, we would be building something for our children, something that would last." The idea was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. Eliza thought of the girl she had been, locked out in the snow with nothing to her name. She thought of how far they had come together, the life they had built through hard work and love. "Let us do it," she said. "Let us build something of our own." The negotiations were complex and stressful. Franklin worked with the bank to secure a loan for the portion they could not cover with savings, putting up everything they had as collateral. There were moments when it seemed the deal would fall through, when other buyers emerged with deeper pockets. But Franklin's reputation and his knowledge of the property ultimately won the day. The Roberts children wanted to see the ranch go to someone who would care for it, not just someone looking for a quick profit. In the spring of 1895, Franklin and Eliza Ashford became the owners of the Rocking W Ranch, newly renamed the Ashford Ranch. It was 100 acres of grazing land, timber and water rights, with a herd of 500 head of cattle and more than a dozen horses. The first year was the hardest they had ever worked. Franklin was up before dawn and often did not return until after dark, managing the cattle, overseeing the ranch hands, dealing with buyers and suppliers. Eliza kept the books, managed the household, and raised their children, often falling into bed exhausted at the end of each day. But they were happy. They were building something together, creating a legacy that would outlast them. The children grew up learning to ride and rope, understanding the rhythm of ranch life. Thomas, especially, took to it naturally, and Franklin began teaching him everything he knew about cattle and land management. Eliza's father, now elderly and frail, moved into a small house on the ranch property. He had sold his place in Flagstaff and had nowhere else to go, and Eliza could not bring herself to turn him away. He made himself useful by teaching Thomas to read and watching the twins when Eliza was busy. The relationship between father and daughter would always carry scars, but time and forgiveness had softened the worst of the pain. On a warm summer evening in 1900, Franklin and Eliza sat on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over their land. The children were inside, supposedly getting ready for bed but more likely engaged in some elaborate game. They could hear laughter floating through the windows. "You remember that night in the snow?" Franklin asked, taking Eliza's hand in his. "Every day," Eliza said. "It was the worst night of my life and the beginning of the best part of my life, all at once. I think about what might have happened if I had not gone into town that evening," Franklin said. "If I had decided to wait out the storm at the ranch instead." "Do not think about that," Eliza said, squeezing his hand. "You did come into town. You did find me. Everything that came after we built together." Franklin raised her hand to his lips and kissed it, a gesture that had become familiar over the years but never lost its sweetness. "I love you, Eliza Ashford, more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." "I love you too," Eliza said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for breaking that lock. Thank you for taking me in. Thank you for giving me a life I never thought I could have." "Thank you for saying yes," Franklin replied. "Thank you for building this life with me." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple, watching the stars begin to appear. The ranch spread out before them, a testament to their hard work and partnership. Inside, their children laughed and played, safe and loved. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed and horses nickered in their stalls. It was not the life either of them had imagined when they were young. Franklin had thought he would drift forever, never finding a place to call home. Eliza had thought she would make a modest marriage in Flagstaff, living a small, unremarkable life. Instead, a blizzard and an act of kindness had changed everything, bringing two lost souls together and creating something beautiful from tragedy. In 1903, Eliza gave birth to their fourth child, a son they named James. He was a surprise, as Eliza was 37 and had thought her childbearing years were behind her. But he was a welcome surprise, a late blessing that delighted his older siblings and brought new energy to the household. Thomas, now 16, had grown into a fine young man who worked alongside his father every day. He had Franklin's quiet competence and Eliza's determination, and it was clear that he would take over the ranch someday. The twins, now 13, were as different as night and day. Emma was studious and loved books, already talking about becoming a teacher. Sarah was wild and fearless, more at home on horseback than anywhere else. The ranch continued to thrive under Franklin's management. He had a gift for knowing when to buy and when to sell, for reading the weather and the market. He treated his employees fairly and paid them well, which meant they stayed and worked hard. The Ashford Ranch gained a reputation throughout Arizona for quality cattle and honest dealing. Eliza's father passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1905, surrounded by his family. He had spent his final years making amends as best he could, and while Eliza never forgot his betrayal, she had learned to remember the good parts too. They buried him on the ranch, under a cottonwood tree where he had liked to sit and watch the sunset. The years rolled on, bringing the usual mix of joys and sorrows. There were good years with plenty of rain and fat cattle, and lean years when drought tested their resilience. There were births and deaths, weddings and funerals, all the moments that make up a life fully lived. Thomas married at 22, bringing home a smart, practical girl named Helen from a neighboring ranch. They built a house on the property and started their own family, giving Franklin and Eliza their first grandchildren. Emma went to Teachers College in Tucson and returned to open a school on the ranch for the children of the employees. Sarah married a horse trader and spent her time traveling between ranches, dealing in the finest bloodstock in the territory. Young James grew up in the midst of all this activity, the beloved baby of the family. He had a gift for making people laugh and a kind heart that endeared him to everyone. Franklin's hair turned silver, and lines deepened around Eliza's eyes, but their love remained constant. They still held hands while walking around the ranch. They still kissed each morning before Franklin headed out to work. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset and talking about their day. In 1912, Arizona achieved statehood, and the Ashfords hosted a huge celebration on the ranch, inviting everyone they knew. It was a day of pride and joy, marking the culmination of the American frontier dream. The Wild West they had known was taming, becoming something new and different, but the values that had built it remained. On a crisp December evening in 1915, Franklin and Eliza sat by the fire in their living room, exactly 30 years after the blizzard that had brought them together. Their children and grandchildren had gathered for dinner, filling the house with warmth and noise. Now, with everyone gone home or settled in for the night, it was just the two of them again. 30 years, Franklin said wonderingly. Has it really been that long? It has gone by so fast, Eliza said. And yet, when I think back to that night, it feels like a lifetime ago. I was such a different person then. You have always been strong, Franklin said. That is what struck me about you from the beginning. You had been through something terrible, but you did not let it break you. I had help, Eliza reminded him. I had you. Franklin pulled her close and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Marrying me, taking on the ranch, all of it? Never, Eliza said firmly. Not once. You gave me everything I could have wanted and so much more. You gave me love and safety and purpose. You gave me a family and a home. How could I possibly regret that? I am glad, Franklin said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Because you gave me exactly the same things. I was lost before I found you, Eliza. I was just drifting through life without any real direction. You gave me a reason to put down roots to build something lasting. We gave each other that, Eliza corrected. We built this life together, piece by piece. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms and in memories. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and gentle, nothing like the violent blizzard of 3 decades past. This snow was peaceful, beautiful, a reminder of where they had started without any of the terror. Eliza thought about the girl she had been, freezing and desperate in the street. She thought about the man who had stopped when no one else would, who had broken a lock not just on a door but on her heart. She thought about all the moments between then and now, the ordinary and the extraordinary, the struggles and the triumphs. Thank you, she whispered. For what? Franklin asked. For everything, Eliza said. For saving me, for loving me, for 30 years of happiness, for this life. Thank you for saying yes, Franklin replied. For taking a chance on a drifting cowboy, for being my partner in all things, for making a house into a home. They kissed, soft and sweet, a kiss that contained 30 years of love and commitment and partnership. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. The fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the ranch in peaceful white. Inside, two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances held each other close, grateful for every moment they had been given. Their story had started with a storm and a stranger's kindness. It had been built on hard work and determination and love. And it would continue through their children and grandchildren, through the ranch they had built and the legacy they would leave behind. But in that moment, by the fire, none of that mattered as much as the simple fact of being together. Franklin and Eliza, Cowboy and the woman he had saved, husband and wife, partners in every sense of the word. They had taken the worst night of Eliza's life and transformed it into the foundation of something beautiful and enduring. As the clock struck midnight, marking the anniversary of that fateful night 3 decades past, Franklin raised Eliza's hand to his lips one more time. "Here is to the next 30 years," he said. "To the next 30 years," Eliza echoed, knowing that whatever came, they would face it together, just as they always had. The snow fell softly outside, gentle and forgiving, covering the world in quiet beauty. Inside, the fire burned warm and steady, a beacon of light and warmth in the darkness. And two hearts beat in rhythm, bound together by a love that had been forged in a blizzard and tempered by time into something unbreakable. They had started with nothing but each other, two lost souls finding refuge from the storm. They had built an empire of sorts, not of money or power, but of love and family and purpose. The Ashford Ranch would stand for generations, a testament to what could be built when two people chose each other, day after day, year after year. But the ranch itself was never the point. The point was this: two people sitting by a fire, hands clasped, hearts full, grateful for the life they had created together. The point was the love that had sustained them through every challenge, the partnership that had made them stronger together than either could have been alone. The point was that on one terrible night, a cowboy had broken a lock and taken in a frozen girl, and in doing so had changed both their lives forever. He had given her shelter from the storm, and she had given him a reason to stay. Together, they had built something that would outlast them both. As the fire burned low and their eyelids grew heavy, Franklin and Eliza made their way upstairs to the bedroom they had shared for 3 decades. They settled into bed together, fitting against each other with the ease of long practice. Eliza's head found its customary place on Franklin's shoulder, and his arm came around her automatically. "Good night, my love," Franklin murmured. "Good night," Eliza replied, pressing a kiss to his chest. They drifted off to sleep surrounded by the evidence of their life together. The house that sheltered them, built with their own hands and money. The children sleeping in nearby rooms, products of their love. The ranch spreading out in all directions, a kingdom they had carved from nothing. But more than any of that, they had each other. And as long as that remained true, nothing else really mattered. The blizzard that could have killed Eliza had instead given her life, real life, full and rich and meaningful. The cowboy who could have ridden past had instead stopped, and in that moment of kindness had found his own salvation. Their story was one of love rising from desperation, of hope born from despair, of two people who had saved each other in the truest sense. It was a story that would be told and retold by their descendants, growing into family legend. The night grandfather Franklin saved grandmother Eliza from the snow, the night that changed everything. But for Franklin and Eliza themselves, it was simply their life. The life they had chosen, had fought for, had built together brick by brick and moment by moment. It was not always easy, and it was not always perfect, but it was theirs, and that made it beautiful. The snow fell through the night, and by morning the ranch was transformed into a winter wonderland. Franklin and Eliza woke to find their youngest grandchildren pressing their faces against the windows, exclaiming over the depth of the snow. The day would be spent in organized chaos, with snowball fights and sled rides and hot chocolate by the fire. But first, Franklin and Eliza took a moment to step outside, just the two of them, and look at the world made new by snow. Franklin wrapped his arms around Eliza from behind, and they stood there together, warm despite the cold, watching the sun rise over their land. "Beautiful," Eliza said. "Yes, you are," Franklin replied, and Eliza laughed, elbowing him gently. "I meant the snow." "I know what you meant," Franklin said, pressing a kiss to her temple, "but I meant what I said." They stood there a moment longer, two people who had been given a second chance and had made the most of it. Two people who had transformed tragedy into triumph, who had chosen love over bitterness, who had built a life worth living. Then, hand in hand, they went back inside to join their family, to live another day of the life they had created together. A life that had started with a broken lock and a cowboy's kindness, and had grown into something neither could have imagined in their wildest dreams. It was a simple story, really. A man saves a woman from a storm, they fall in love, they build a life together. But in the living of it, in the day-to-day reality of choosing each other over and over again, it became something extraordinary. And as Franklin and Eliza settled in for breakfast with their children and grandchildren, surrounded by laughter and love and the warmth of family, they knew that this was what mattered, not the size of the ranch or the number of cattle or any measure of conventional success. This, the people they loved gathered around them, the life they had built together, the love that had sustained them through everything. 30 years ago, on the worst night of her life, Eliza had thought she was going to die. She had thought her story was over before it had really begun. But Franklin had appeared out of the storm like an answer to a prayer she had not even known how to pray. He had broken a lock, taken her in, and given her a future, and she had given him the same thing. A reason to stop drifting, a place to call home, a love to build a life around. They had saved each other, and in doing so, had created something beautiful and lasting. A love story forged in snow and sealed with time. A partnership that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. A family that would carry their legacy forward into the future. As the years continued to pass, bringing new joys and new challenges, Franklin and Eliza faced them all with the same spirit that had brought them through that first terrible winter. Together, always together, building their life one day at a time. And when, decades later, they passed peacefully within months of each other, surrounded by the family they had created and the love they had nurtured, they left behind more than just a successful ranch. They left behind a story. A testament to the power of kindness, the strength of love, and the beauty that can be built from the worst of circumstances. The Ashford Ranch continued to thrive for generations, each successive family learning the story of how it all began. With a blizzard, a cowboy, and a frozen girl who became the matriarch of a dynasty. With a broken lock and an act of compassion that changed two lives forever. And every winter, when the snow fell soft and white over the Arizona highlands, the Ashfords would remember. They would tell the story again, keeping it alive, honoring the love that had started it all. The love between Franklin and Eliza, cowboy and survivor, husband and wife, partners in every sense. It was a love that had conquered cold and cruelty, a love that had built something lasting from nothing. A love that proved, beyond any doubt, that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best. That sometimes salvation comes from unexpected sources. That sometimes a stranger's kindness can change everything. Franklin and Eliza's story was one of redemption and second chances, of love triumphing over adversity, of two broken people finding wholeness in each other. It was a story that started in desperation and ended in joy, that began with a lock breaking and concluded with an unbreakable bond. It was, in the end, a story of love, pure and simple and complicated and beautiful. The kind of love that builds families and ranches and legacies. The kind of love that lasts beyond a lifetime, echoing through the generations. The kind of love that makes all the difference. And it all started on one terrible, wonderful night when a cowboy broke a lock and took in a girl left to die in the snow. One moment of compassion that rippled out into decades of happiness, creating a love story for the ages. A Wild West tale of survival and salvation, of finding home in another person, of building something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. Franklin and Eliza Ashford lived and loved and left behind a legacy that would endure. Their story became legend, passed down through the generations, a reminder that kindness matters, that love conquers, that second chances are real and precious and worth fighting for. And somewhere in the heart of Arizona, the ranch they built still stands, a monument to what two people can create when they choose each other, when they work together, when they love with their whole hearts. The Ashford Ranch, born from a blizzard, built on love, standing strong through the decades as a testament to a cowboy and the woman he saved, and who saved him right back. Their story had a happy ending, the kind where love wins and families thrive and legacies endure. The kind of ending that feels earned because it was built on hard work and dedication and an unshakable commitment to each other. The kind of ending that satisfies because it is real and true and complete. Franklin and Eliza got there happily ever after. They earned it, fought for it, built it with their own hands and hearts. And in doing so, they created something that would outlast them both, a love story that would inspire their descendants and anyone who heard it. A reminder that even in the darkest, coldest moments, hope exists. Help can come. Love can bloom. And from the worst of circumstances, the most beautiful life can grow. The end of their story was really just the beginning of a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. But for Franklin and Eliza themselves, the end was peaceful and right. They lived long lives, full of love and purpose. They raised their children well and saw their grandchildren grown. They built something lasting and beautiful. They loved each other deeply until the very end. And when their time came, they went knowing they had lived well, loved well, and left the world better than they found it. They had taken a terrible beginning and transformed it into a beautiful ending. They had proven that love, real love, can overcome anything. That kindness creates ripples that spread far beyond the initial act. That two people committed to each other and working together can build something extraordinary. That is the story of Franklin and Eliza Ashford, cowboy and survivor, husband and wife, partners, parents, grandparents, ranch owners, but most of all, two people who loved each other deeply and built a beautiful life together from the most unlikely of beginnings. Their love story started in a snowstorm and ended with a legacy. And in between was a lifetime of love, laughter, hard work, and happiness. Everything a good life should be, everything a great love story needs. A beginning, a middle, and a satisfying, happy, complete ending. A love that lasted. A story worth telling. A life well lived.